What's going on, guys? No guys here. Welcome back to another quick video. Well, it'll be a quick video. I'm going to explain to you why the 3-5-2 both mathematically in terms of numbers inside the midfield is more superior than the 4-2-3-1, and I suppose you can say in terms of attack why I really prefer the 3-5-2. Now, in case you're wondering, the 4-2-3-1 is still a meta formation. If you're in a tournament, if you're a pro player, you're probably still going to be inclined to be using the 4-2-3-1, but the 3-5-2 is probably better than the 4-1-2-1-2 second variation, the 4-4-2, probably the 4-2-1 in terms of attacking, definitely anyway, and also 4-1-2-1-2 second variation. Now, it's important I explain to you the reasons why. The best way I can depict this is probably just to give you a bit of a visual representation. So the way I see the span of the team is I see it like a 4-1-2-1-2. The issue with the 4-1-2-1-2 is obviously the formation is very narrow, and it's fine if you're just using a narrow play, but you don't have any wingers. So when you're attacking, you lose the fact you have no wings. You can hug the sidelines and left back and right back. You can put them on inverted. They come inside a little bit, but they're not left mids and right mids. So the reason why I prefer the 3-5-2 is because the 4-1-2-1-2 is actually inside the 3-5-2. So think about this as your two strikers, your cam, your center mids, and your CDM. That is the way I see the 3-5-2. I basically see a 4-1-2-1-2 second variation within the 3-5-2, and obviously you have the left mid and the right mid, which gives you the numerical advantage, of course, in the midfield, but also gives you that wing outlet. If you want to ever go down the wing, you want to do a 1-2 with your cam to your winger, you have that availability. That's what I prefer the 3-5-2. Now, if you compare this to the 4-2-3-1, the way I like to see this is basically a 4-2-3-1. If you look at it, it's the exact same layout as a 4-2-3-1. The only difference is one of your left backs becomes a striker, or you can argue a left back, but in theory, okay, one of the defenders is a striker. The benefit of two strikers is if you're playing against traditional like a 4-4, 4-4-2 or 4-2-3-1, is you have three players versus four. Now, why this is important is if you're playing, let's say, against someone that's parking a bus with two CDMs, if you're playing a 4-2-3-1, you can argue like this. You're going to have a striker and a CDM for one of his CDMs each. So that's why it's really hard to attack. But when you have two strikers occupying a space and a cam to distribute the ball around with, it makes it much easier to break through. That's why I prefer the three. That's what, if you remember, some of you guys, real OG guys, will know what I made last year. I made a formation where one of your centre backs becomes a striker. Now last year everyone was like, "What on earth are you doing?" It's ludicrous, but it wasn't, because there was no other formation where the lamb and the ram were very narrow and the centre back joined the attack. The reason why I wanted this system is because there wasn't a formation that exists in FIFA where you can have three cams, a striker, which is basically a 4-2-3-1, and you want someone else to join the attack like a centre mid, then you lose this midfield presence. So that's why I made the Mendy, the flashback Mendy, whatever card it was, as a centre back join the attack. It sounds ludicrous, but it makes sense because you want two strikers and you want a cam in behind and you want the lamb and a ram. Now, obviously, I've kind of veered away from that because it's not always viable. You need, for example, a centre-back that can play as a second striker. That Mendy was 5-star, 4-star, maybe like Team of the Year. Trent played very well there. You need those top-tier cards, but that's why the 3-5-2 is better. So that's why I've gone towards it. And even then, look, I've still gone towards it. So that's the main thing. Number one, you play it's like the 4-2-3-1, the 4-1-2-1-2. And it's like the 4-2-3-1. And this is the final thing which kind of really drew the line for me. The 4-4-2 is still one of the best formations in the game. The only issue is that a lot of people won't understand this, but with the 4-4-2, unless you're a top tier player, if you're playing against someone that's really good, the strikers and the two CDMs are isolated. You need a cam to link all those players together. You need a number 10. You need someone to drop inside. If you put a striker on false 9, it creates that system in theory, but then you lose that attacking presence. So the situation is, what do you do now? The most common sense thing to do is, for example, if you're playing a 4-4-2, the most common sense thing to do, even in a defensive variation, is have one of the centre mids join the attack, one of the CDMs. But then that leaves you with only one player like that. So that's why I don't like the 4-4-2, because if you're up against a really, really good player, and let's say, look, 4-4-2, I can play it, there's no doubt, but the problem is I have to concentrate. When I'm streaming, I'm just messing around, looking at the chat, doing this and that. I'm not really paying attention at the game too much. So if I make a mistake and I have the ball over here and I lose the ball and my centre mid's out of position, it's done. It's legit. It's almost a goal conceded. So you've got to be really, really smart. And the only way you can do this is if you have one of your centre mids and join the attack. But why have that when you can have the 3-5-2 which if you think about it, is basically a 4-4-2. Imagine that's your two CDMs, that's your left mid, that's your right mid, that's your two strikers. The only difference is you have that link-up player that can. And that is why I keep going back to the 3-5-2. Now, if you're asking me if I was playing in a tournament, let's say, for example, I was competing, let's say. If I was doing that, I'd probably have a system where I had a 4-2-3-1. I'll be honest, a very conservative, all-out, I want to close the game out. Maybe a 3-5-2, a 5-2-1-2, which I'll get onto in the future. And if I'm losing, I might change to a 4-4-2 as I want to. But the 3-5-2 definitely has its place in the team. Now, if you're asking me which one is better out of these two, I'll say to you, defensively, in terms of stability, the 4-2-1 is better. Because the way I made it 3-5-2 is, when you're defending, the left mid comes inside and it makes kind of a midfield 3, and then you have a back 5. Now, I know obviously the 5-3-2 was obviously being used by Dull and Mike, but it's always been like this for many years. I made a video about a 5-3-2 and a 5-2-1-2 in FIFA 19. It's always been that way. I think now it's just been very much considered meta. Obviously, look, I'm not some big guy with like 2 million subscribers. If I did, for example, and I released that video, the whole community would be an outcry. But thankfully, I'm a small guy. 3 years ago when I released it, a few people blinked an eye, but no one really understood it too much. Now people understand how they're completely unmarked, which I'll make a separate video on a 5-3-2, another video. But that is the reason why. So if you're going to close the game out, then yes, use the 4-2-3-1, because defensively it's more stable than a 4-2-3-1. You have a back 4, 2 CDMs, 3 cams. The cams come inside, because don't forget in a 4-4-2, some of you guys won't know this, but back beginning of FIFA 20, they nerfed it. So now these strikers, they don't come. So let's say you're defending, right? Assuming this is the box. Before, back in the day, the 4-4-2 used to be like this, like that, like that, like that. And the two strikers used to be outside the box. Now they patched it so the two strikers, any two strikers in a 4 formation layout or a 5 formation layout, they always stay forward. But the 3-5-2 gets around that. Now, I actually made a 3-5-2 video in FIFA 19, I think, if any of you guys remember, and FIFA 20. There was a system where you could basically create a 5-4-1 where these become left mid and right mids. That was a cracked system. Looking back now, I think that probably would have been the best formation ever created in any FIFA iteration. But obviously they patched that because it was just too stupidly OP. So I would say if you're going to close the game out, let's say you're winning 2-0, I'd resort going back to the 4-2-1. That's why, for example, I can't get rid of these two formations. In fact, I made this prediction, it's the 4th of the 2nd of February, yeah? I think realistically, maybe until the end of the year, I would have these two formations in my squad guaranteed. But more importantly, the 3-5-2 is really fun to play. I don't want to sit there and play the 4-2-1. Like, for example, this week I'm stopping at gold 3. For those who don't know, I'm really not enjoying this game. For my playstyle, someone doesn't abuse mechanics, just wants to play FIFA. Don't park the bus, don't even use hardly any skill moves. I just want to play normal FIFA. People are parking the bus, abusing mechanics. It's not fun. The difference between these two formations is if I play the 4-2-3-1, I get 14-0 almost guaranteed 9 out of 10 times. If I play the 3-5-2, I maybe get 14-0 most of the time. Sometimes I get 14-1. That's the only differentiating factor. But if you are going to play these together, I'll say use this formation and then use this formation to close the game out. There's only one weak side with a 3-5-2, and that's if your opponent has, for example, a striker and a left foot. I don't really want to talk about it because obviously it's my formation, but if I was going to counter my formation, I would use, for example, the 4-3-2-1. The reason why is because it's not like the 5-2-1-2. You don't want, or the 4-1-2-1-2. You don't want this diamond up front. You don't want a left wing and a right wing. You don't want a 4-3-3 because these guys are too wide. The way to counter both the 5-3-2 and a 3-5-2 is basically have one of these players on get forward, defend out of your mind, and have, for example, these guys all on stay forward. Because what happens is you'll isolate your opponent's back. So let's say your opponent's playing a 3-5-2. Normally they'll be lined up with their cam over here, the two strikers here, the left mid, the right mid, and the two CDMs. If you can get Nedved or your left centre mid in between, pass the ball to Nedved, and then you create the situation where it's a 3v4, that's the only way to counter the 3-5-2. I would say safely. Obviously, you don't have to. Then the reason why I say it safely is because if you put get forward on Nedved, you can still defend the central area with 3 midfielders. If you have all these guys and stay forward, for example, in a 4-2-3-1, I see the suggestion, oh yeah, why don't you just use the 4-2-3-1 and just stick everyone on stay forward? Well, if you do that, your opponent's going to break through you with your two CDMs and your back four. We know how OP the 3-5-2 is. So you can't just sit there with everyone on stay forward. So if you are going to break through, the way to counter it, in my opinion, is you want to get a system like the 4-3-2-1, have all of these guys on stay forward, have one of your center mids, if you're very comfortable defending, have another center mid on get forward as well. That way when you go forward, you race forward. But again, it's kind of a deception battle, you know. You have to dig in, you're digging in a wall of attrition, you try to get the ball back as soon as you can, and then you counter him like never before. And that's the way you really break down a 3-4. That's the only weakness. And if you're watching this video, most people are not going to know about this weakness. They might stick on, for example, the 4-3-3. It sounds logical. Yes, these guys are very, very wide. But normally what happens is that your opponent will suppress you, and by the time that the left mid and right mid will come and maintain integrity and basically reinstate back into a solid 5 shape. So that's what I would say. My best advice is if you're going to counter it, use the 4-3-2-1. But otherwise, the 3-5-2, I wouldn't say there's any weaknesses. If you are struggling with this one formation, what I would say is for both of the left centre back, the centre back, and the right centre back, you can put very fast players there. It's so funny now how everyone's claiming responsibility of fullbacks and centre back when I've been saying this since FIFA 19. It's funny. I've been saying this, I did this since like FIFA 11. I remember back in FIFA 11, I was a kid, didn't spend FIFA points. I couldn't afford Koscielny, so I put Mika Richards in centre back on 7 chemistry. Since then, I've not looked back. FIFA 19, I really tried it out when I came back to FIFA again because, FIFA 18 is when I play like, you know, Kyle Walker in left back and Juan Fran in right back, if you remember flashback Juan Fran. But now it's very, very important. And now bigger people are bigger than me in the community, people that respect a bit more than myself. I saying, for example, fullbacks and centre back. So I think those are definitely the way going forward now. I think no one's doubting their favourite content creators saying that as well. So definitely go with the 3 centre back, fullbacks at the back. I would, even if you still are kind of skeptical, base stats are the most important thing. What I would say is try to get, if you are going to play a back 3, try to get at the very least a centre back and maybe a left back and a right back, because when you lose the ball, these guys are going to act as, for example, like left centre backs and right centre backs, left back, right backs, kind of like the kind of between them. So what you need to do is you need to get someone that's fast, so that way if your opponent is using, for example, the 4-3-2-1, you're going to have the pace to recover. I would recommend 3 centre backs, but if you got someone like Virgil van Dijk or Marquinhos, you got the slowest player. You want the slowest guy to be in the middle, and these guys, you want them to be almost like fullbacks. And try to get like a right footer here, because then you can distribute the ball or do a driven through ball on the right hand side to your right mid. So I'll definitely recommend getting a right back there. But I'd say a fullback is all you really need. Wan-Bissaka is a perfect example of someone that fits perfectly in this formation. I think you can play anywhere. If you can't, I'll give you my honest opinion. If you cannot find anyone that fits in, just sub Wan-Bissaka on. I was subbing Wan-Bissaka on 5 chemistry, and he worked better than even the likes of, like, who did I even have in centre back? I had Marquinhos, the flashback card. So I would just say just sub a player on if that's the case. One thing people always ask is, do you have to use hug the sidelines? You don't have to. You can use stay wide if you just forget to do it. Sometimes when I'm streaming, I forget as well. That's completely fine. But I would say don't put cut inside unless you want to be internal. I would leave these on balance, and I would just say use hug the sidelines. You don't have to use hug the sidelines. You can turn it off. If your opponent is using overload the ball side, of course, hug the sidelines is a very viable option, because the left mid and right mid, they stand very, very close to the sidelines, and they make the pitch even wider, and they basically pin your opponent's left back and right back, which creates more space for you in the middle. So think about, even if you're not using these as attackers going forward, they're going to come back, and then they're going to press, and they're going to basically push your left back and right, your opponent's left back and right back as far as apart, and then that way you're going to have more space down the middle corridor. So that's what I would say is, even if you don't use them, if you don't pass them, just by occupying the space, they're creating space for your team. I have 2 variations of this. So I have the one where one's on comeback and defense. Now, personally, I use the one with all 3 of them on stay forward. Now, this is the thing. I'm very comfortable with defending. If you know you're not comfortable defending, stick this guy and come back, and stick this guy and come back. If you know, like, I'll be honest, I'm very comfortable defending, even against a top tier player. I can put these guys on stay forward, but you have to understand, it depends on your playstyle. You know, when I make these formations, you have to remember, if you're watching this video for this long, thankfully, you're either interested in the video or you're like, you're a regular viewer. I have to make these formations for everyone, okay? The reason why my formations work compared to most other people's is a pro player will say, okay, these are my tactics, okay? This is most pro player tactics, I'll be honest. Something like this, maybe that, maybe like that. That's most pro player tactics with balance. Because they know what they're doing. They don't need to alter too much. They don't need to change anything around. They know what they're doing. So if I give this exact same thing to, you know, a goal 3 player, is it going to make them better? No, but you put a simple thing like long ball and you give it to a goal 3 player, they'll naturally play better because they don't know how to trigger runs themselves. So when I release a formation, when I say come back on offense and you think it's too offensive, unless I say do not change it because it's part of the system, then I'll say definitely put come back on offense. So don't forget, if you put come back on offense on this system, how it works is he comes back, that creates the back 5. Ronaldo comes back over here and he creates 3 midfielders, Eto, so it ends up becoming a 5-3-1-1. That's the system how you defend in a 3-5-2. So the system defends and attacks differently depending on the instructions. Another question I get asked is, can you put one of these players on join the attack? You can. When I'm losing, let's say 1-0 down, and let's say I'm really struggling and someone's parking a bus, I might put get forward or might put, for example, balance on one of the more attacking CDMs. I have record breaker Quadrado here that I use in the system, but you can use anyone else for that matter. Ideally, I would say if you're looking about players, try to get someone who's very universal. I like 2 universal CDMs. Like if it was me, I'd get someone like Bruno Fernandes and someone like maybe Renato Sanchez. 2 universal that can do both. But someone like Kante, someone like Renato Sanchez, someone like Marquinhos, Renato, Vieira and Hullet, you want a defensive player and you want a guy that can go forward. So even if they're both on stay back, Kante's a good example because he's got good agility and balance, so he can maneuver very quickly even though he hasn't got the best of going forward. That's why he's very much renowned to be one of the best CDMs in the game. You ideally want at least one guy that's got a high defensive work rate. People don't notice, but they've actually nerfed the way CDMs work. Last year, CDMs, when you put them on stay back, they stay back and then they actually position themselves naturally very good. This year, they're a bit higher. This is why this is the only reason why I said a lot of people won't understand this, but I've used this formation so much. I know where these CDMs are just by not even looking at the game. I just know where they are by just default, okay? I know exactly where they are. The issue is that they've nerfed this and now the CDMs sit higher than last year. So you'll see a big difference. Last year, for example, the CDMs they set back. I was comfortable with choosing my CDM and running back. Most of the time now, you'll see that your opponent's strikers are in front of your CDM. So that's why they nerfed the 4-2-2-1. I think they did it behind the scenes. They didn't really tell anyone. I noticed this the first week. I played it for 4-2-2 and I was like, you know what? It's not as powerful as it once was. So I think CDMs on all formations are nerfed. And that's why the 3-5-2 is really good, because in the 5-3-2, these are not CDMs. CDMs already naturally sit a bit back. So that's why I prefer the CDMs in a 3-5-2. For the cam, you ideally want someone who's got high agility and balance. Ideally, you want 3 strikers here. If the guy's coming back on the fence, you want someone with good stamina. But 3 good strikers, Neymar, Ben Yedder, all these guys. Top tier cards, Promes, Dembele, some people on the cheaper ends in striker, for example, on the lower end. That's who you want there. Your cam is kind of the link-up player, so he needs to have good passing and a good dribbling, because dribbling is important to evade your opponent, especially if your opponent is parking a bus. For CDM, I said 1 defensive, 1 going forward. For the left mid and right mid, it doesn't matter. People say, oh, can I use 4 backs here or can I use left mids? Now, I use left mids because let me tell you the honest truth now. Again, some people will doubt me. That's completely fine. You want to doubt me, that's fine. Have a good night's sleep. But for those that trust me, just use left mids and right mids. I've done a test. You can use left mids and right mids at fullbacks, because think about this. When does your fullback ever tackle the ball? They're only used for 2 things: to run back and to run and jockey. And even if you tackle the ball with someone with 20 stand tackling, if you time it correctly, you're still going to win the ball. So it's not an issue if people make it out to be, oh, you need to, for example, you need to have someone who's got 90 stand tackling. You don't. You just need fast players, good stamina here, good agility and balance. Now, ideally, high work rates is ideal on both ends, or high medium, so as in medium defensive. That's what I would recommend in this situation. If you have a choice between a striker, someone who's coming back, have him on high or high medium is what I'd recommend. For the striker that's always on stay forward, I'd recommend a high low or a high medium. Either one of those two. high low or high medium is what I'd recommend. For the cam, if you ever want to come back, high high, otherwise high medium is perfect as well, and that's what I'd recommend. For the CDMs, one high medium, one medium high. For the back, let me tell you a secret. It doesn't matter about the work rates. The most important work rate for a centre back in general is high attacking work rates. You know, Semedo, you guys don't understand, is still one of the top 3 centre backs in the game that I've used. His positioning is just unbelievable. And then the fact you factor in his pace, agility and balance, even though he's so short and got such bad strength. Even Mukiele, look, Mukiele's one of the top 3 centre backs as well. He has everything you need, but just because Semedo is it just feels better. I can't explain it. I really can't. He's so good. As long as you have high defensive work rates, it's fine. Now you can get away with medium, but high defensive work rates means that they'll be positioned a bit better. Now this is a bit more important. Last year it was kind of irrelevant. Now I'm finding out it means a bit more in this FIFA. That's why Kante is much more better this FIFA, because his positioning is better. So if you're looking for a defensive player, whether that's a centre back or a CDM, try to look for high defensive work rates. At least the central player, at least the one in the middle, have high defensive work rates. Because if for the left centre back and the right centre back, that's fine for them to be fine. They don't go forward. People think, oh, they got high attacking work rates. They suddenly go forward on their own, frolicking around up front in the midfield cam area. No, they don't. They still stay there. It's just defensively they're a bit more stable. But this is a long video. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is just me talking about the 352. I was going to upload this on my second channel, Nil Guides 2, but you know what? I thought, you know what? Since everyone plays the 352, I might as well upload it on my main channel. But thanks for watching, guys. Take it easy. Have a wonderful evening. And I'll catch you guys, well, probably tomorrow with a new formation video. I'm probably going to update the 4-2-3-1. I'll let you know. I'm still working on Blitzkrieg, so we'll see how that goes. But I think probably the 4-2-3-1 for now. Thanks for watching, boys. Take it easy, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out.